I still remember the first night I saw the Christmas rose bloom. It was one of those winters when even I felt the cold deep in my bones. Snow lay in drifts against the hills, and the wind swept over the fields like a white tide, erasing paths and burying fences. From the sky, as I flew my silent rounds, I could see whole valleys tucked under a blanket of frost, so thick that it seemed nothing soft or green could have survived beneath it. It was beautiful in its own fierce way, moonlight on snow, stars sharp as ice crystals. But it was also a hard winter. Letters that reached the North Pole that year were full of worries. Parents asked for work. Children asked for their families to stop arguing. Some asked only for their grandmother to get well, or for a home that did not leak, or for the courage to be kind even when they were afraid. There were fewer lists of toys and more quiet pleas for things I cannot wrap. On one of my scouting flights before Christmas Eve, I passed over a small village nestled at the edge of a dark forest. The houses were huddled close together, their roofs heavy with snow, chimneys puffing like tired breath into the night. Most of the windows glowed with candlelight, but there was one house at the very edge of the village that called to me more strongly than all the rest. It was a small cottage, half buried in a drift. Smoke barely rising from the crooked chimney. Only one window showed a faint light, a little golden square in all that blue-white darkness. From that window came the feeling I know better than any sound, the ache of someone hoping against hope, refusing to let their last little flame go out. I guided the sleigh lower, until the roofs rose up beneath me and the forest's black branches reached toward the sky like hands. The reindeer's hooves brushed the snow at the edge of the wood, and I listened. Inside the cottage, a woman sat at the bedside of a child. The girl was thin, her cheeks hollowed by a long illness, her hair spread across the pillow like pale straw. Her eyes, though, were very much alive, wide and bright, watching the shadows from the fire dance on the ceiling. Her mother held a rough, work-worn hand against the child's forehead, worry etched into every line of her face. On the small table beside the bed stood a cracked mug with the last of their herbs steeping in water, and beside it, a plate with only crumbs where bread used to be. "I'm sorry there's no tree this year," the mother said softly. "The snow came too early. The road to town is blocked. We have no candles left for one anyway." The girl smiled, a little crooked but brave. "We still have Christmas," she whispered, "even if we can't see it." From my place on the roof, I felt those words as clearly as if they had been spoken to me. Even if we can't see it. Children often understand what adults have forgotten. The mother sighed. "What I wish," she murmured, more to herself than to the child, "is that I had something beautiful to bring you. Just one thing to remind you that the world can still bloom, even in winter." The girl turned her head toward the frosted window. Beyond it, the world was all hard surfaces and sharp edges, ice on the well, snow piled against the door, black trees creaking in the wind, nothing green, nothing blooming, nothing soft. "Maybe something will," she said. Her mother stroked her hair. "Nothing grows in a winter like this," she replied, her voice gentle but heavy. "The ground is too cold. Even the hardiest plants are sleeping. I have seen many miracles in my long life, some subtle as a change of heart, some bright as sudden sunlight through clouds. But there are times when even I feel the old magic stir more strongly, as if the world itself is listening to a wish and wondering whether it might be granted." The girl closed her eyes then, and in that moment she made a wish so quiet that her lips barely moved. It was not for herself. It was not for toys or sweets or snow that sparkled instead of stung. It was for her mother. "Please," she breathed, "let her see something beautiful again, something living, something that proves the cold won't last forever." The kind of wish that forgets itself and thinks only of another has a power all its own. I stepped down from the sleigh and walked to the edge of the forest. The snow was deep, crunching beneath my boots, the air so cold it crackled. The trees stood like ancient guardians, branches woven together, shadows thick as ink beneath them. No birds sang, no streams ran. It was the kind of winter silence that can make even strong hearts feel small. But under all that, I could feel it. The faint pulse of life, sleeping in the roots and seeds, waiting. Winter is not death. It is a long-held breath. Still, no rose grows in such weather without help. I'm not the source of all miracles, but sometimes I'm allowed to be present when they choose to happen. I knelt in the snow, pressed my gloved hand to the frozen ground, and listened. For a long moment, there was nothing but the deep, slow heartbeat of the earth. Then, faint as the twitch of a dream, something stirred far beneath the frost. A warmth, not of my making, answered that little girl's wish. The snow at the edge of the wood shifted, just a little, as if something underneath had pushed upward against all the weight pressing down. The wind paused, as if curious. The moon slipped from behind a cloud and laid a silver path over the drifts. Slowly, impossibly, a small green shoot broke through the snow. In all the wide white world around us, it was the only splash of color. It trembled in the cold air, then straightened, leaf unfolding like a hand opening for the first time. The snow melted in a small circle around it, revealing a patch of dark, living earth. Before my eyes, the stem grew, not wildly, not with showy speed, but with determination. A tight bud appeared at its tip, pale and closed, as if listening. Then, as the girl inside the cottage let out a weary breath and her mother blinked back tears, the bud began to open. Petal by petal, like fingers uncurling, the flower revealed itself. It was white, pure and luminous against the night, with a heart the color of soft gold where the pollen lay. Frost crystals dotted its edges, catching the moonlight until it looked as if it had been dusted with stars. It glowed not with its own light, but with all the light that winter usually hides. I reached out and touched it gently. It was warm. "A Christmas rose," I murmured. "Well now, that is something." I carefully loosened the soil around its roots. Lifting it with both hands, it did not wilt, it did not shiver. It simply lay there, open and bright, as if it knew exactly where it was meant to go. Down the chimney I went, in a flurry of ashen sparks, landing lightly on the hearth beside the fading fire. The mother had nodded off in her chair, her head tilted, her hand still resting near the child's. The girl lay awake, eyes half open, drifting between sleep and waking. For a heartbeat, the cottage held its breath. I stepped forward into the glow of the coals and placed the rose in the empty mug where the herbs had been. The water had long gone cold, but as the stem touched it, it seemed to remember warmth. A thin curl of steam rose, and the flower stood tall, petals open to the dim light. The girl's eyes widened. For a moment, I wondered if she would cry out. Instead, she simply stared, as if seeing exactly what she had expected, yet still filled with awe. She looked from the flower to the dark corner where I stood and back again. Her lips parted in a small, wondering smile. "I knew something would bloom," she whispered. Her mother stirred, waking with a start. Her gaze fell on the flower, and all the tiredness in her face seemed to fall away. What is this?" she breathed. "How can this be?" "It's a Christmas rose," the girl said. "It grew because winter isn't forever." The mother reached out tentatively, as if afraid it would vanish at her touch. Her fingers brushed the petals, and I saw the moment when she felt their warmth. Tears filled her eyes, not of grief this time, but of something softer, deeper. "Who could have brought such a thing?" she whispered. I could have stepped forward then. I could have spoken aloud and made it clear. But some gifts are better when they arrive wrapped in mystery, so I only tipped my head in the shadows and let the quiet do the talking. The mother lifted the mug and set it closer to the bed, where the girl could see it clearly. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice thick. "It shouldn't be alive, not in this cold, but it is." The girl nodded. "Like us," she said. "We're still here." They fell asleep eventually, both of them, the rose keeping watch beside them. Outside, the snow continued to fall. The wind continued to howl. The world did not suddenly become easy, but inside that cottage, something had changed. A tiny piece of spring had settled into the heart of winter and refused to leave. In the morning, the villagers talked of little else. They came to the edge house to see the impossible bloom, crowding into the small room with their scarves and boots and wondering eyes. Some called it a miracle. Some called it a sign. Some simply stood and stared, feeling something thaw inside them that had nothing to do with weather. Not long after, the girl's fever broke. It was not as sudden as the flower's appearance. Healing rarely is. It came in small steps. One night of easier breathing, one morning with a little more color in her cheeks, one afternoon when she could sit up and laugh at a joke. But within weeks, she was strong enough to walk to the window on her own and press her hand against the glass, watching the snow recede. The Christmas rose did not wither. It stayed green and white through the rest of the winter, through the first hints of thaw, through the first bird song of spring. When the ground was soft enough, her mother planted it at the edge of the forest, where I had first lifted it from the snow. Year after year, it bloomed at Christmas time. Children grew up hearing the story. Some believed every word, some doubted but still went to look at the rose, just in case. Mothers brought their worries to that little patch of earth. Fathers brought their tiredness. Old folks brought their memories. All of them stood, for at least a moment, a little straighter, a little warmer, a little more certain that the cold is never the whole story. And as for me, each time I pass over that village now, I make sure to glance toward the edge of the forest. Even when the snow is deep and the trees are bare, I know that somewhere beneath the white lies the memory of a flower that bloomed when it should not have been able to. The legend of the Christmas rose is told in many ways. Some say it grew from the tears of a child who had nothing to give. Some say it sprang up where a simple prayer was spoken into the frost. I can only tell you what I have seen, that in the hardest winters, when hope seems buried and the world feels frozen, the smallest selfless wish can crack the ice. You may never see a rose push through snow at your doorstep, but every time you choose to think of someone else before yourself, every time you decide to be kind when it would be easier to turn away, every time you dare to believe that something good can grow in a hard season, you are planting seeds of your own. They may bloom where you least expect them, so the next time you find winter settling heavy around you, remember that cottage, that child, that impossible flower glowing in the lamplight. Remember that beneath every frozen field, life is waiting. And remember that one quiet wish for someone else's joy can invite more warmth into the world than all the feasts and fireworks combined. That, to me, is the true legend of the Christmas rose, that love which forgets itself, even for a moment, can bloom in any weather. And as long as there are hearts willing to make such wishes, I will be there too, flying through the winter night, watching for the next small miracle to push its way through the snow.